for us, we're the same. It's just like, man, we just want to get back to Queensland, but it's just taking us, it seems like forever. But yeah, it won't be too long.
That is it. They are finally open. I know y'all have been waiting a long time, 18 plus months behind locked borders. That is Fortress Australia. If any of you here have watched my other videos as far as my guess as to when things would open up, I'll link it here. Or when I returned from Australia earlier this year, I'll link it here as to how things were earlier in the pandemic in 2020, earlier this year in 2021. Now we sit here in late 2021 and finally the news has arrived a lot earlier than I thought that Australia is going to start letting certain visa holders into the country very, very soon. The question we'll answer today's video is, can you visit now? Stay tuned to find out. Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Brian and that is Louis. If you guys haven't been here before, this is the Don't Want to Explore channel. Usually it's everything from exploring different places in the world and more recently exploring different trailheads throughout the world, getting on different hikes, whether it's in the US or abroad. Maybe one day you'll see Louis and I hike Aconcagua in Argentina. Stay tuned.
I'd love to.
The purpose of today's video is going to be about a different topic, not hiking, not particularly traveling, maybe in the future, but who you are and when you can get into Australia based on how things are going with the borders and the COVID-19 situation. So that's the background there. Louis and I met when I was doing working holiday over in Australia, and I came back in May. Louis still over there and soon moving from Sydney up to basically Queensland, or New South Wales to Queensland. And we're gonna dive in all things regarding that for basically who can come over there, kind of the strategy on what state you might go to, and then any other advice Louis has for us today. So without further ado, I'm gonna throw the first question over to Louis, kind of like who can come over and what that looks like based off of the latest regulations.
Yeah, so first thing that I want to tell everyone is that the government are constantly changing things. The facts are, the decisions are based on, at this point in time, the vaccination rate. So that's the biggest thing going forward. For those that are wanting to come back into Australia, you're likely only going to be able to come into two states at this point in time as of recording this video. That the first one is New South Wales. So that's the state of Sydney. And Victoria is getting up closer, or they might be above the 80% mark now. So they're two states that I believe international arrivals will be able to come back into as of the recording of this video and of November 1st, 2021. Any Australian citizens who are wanting to come back into the country can come in through Sydney. But then if they're wanting to go to any other states, it depends on those state governments and their regulations. For Amalia and I, we're wanting to get back to our family in Queensland. So for that process to happen, it's been very hard and constantly changing. But for Queensland, they haven't had a lot of COVID cases in comparison to New South Wales and Victoria. So a lot of people, just haven't had COVID around, and so they're not really keen on getting vaccinated, or they just don't care. In Queensland, things happen a little bit slower. It's just the nature of that state, and anyone traveling to Queensland will understand that. But yeah, at this point in time, Brian's actually going to link a couple of links that I've sent him in the description box. So that's the best way to keep up to date with the most relevant data. But as of the national plan, which all states agreed to, at 80%, I believe there'll be no restrictions domestically. Within Australia, you should be able to travel freely. And then above 90%, I believe that's when other folk that are outside Australia, international arrivals, as long as you're vaccinated, I think, then you'll be able to start coming back into Australia. So that's working holiday, tourism, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of states, in particular Queensland, have been really struggling without tourism. Australia operates and relies quite heavily on tourism from all around the world. So yeah, can't wait for those things to kick off again.
Yeah, everybody's been waiting a long, long time. And a quick side note there, I did not mention Louis' better half, Ama or Amaya, is from Argentina. So they have another tie as well, family coming over, which Louis can kind of further elaborate what that looks like.
Correct. Yeah. So Amalia's mum is in Argentina, and she's of course wanting to come across. Has her first granddaughter that she wants to meet. All of those things are so important to families, So to be reunited in Australia has taken some time because of the vaccination rate. But it looks like at this point in time, anyone who's an Australian citizen or a permanent resident in Australia will be able to leave Australia if they wanted to, but also come back into Australia again only through the states that will allow it. But in terms of Amalia's mum, she is able to come, I believe, into Sydney, and then depending on the restrictions of getting to Queensland, which is where we will all be, it will then be governed based on that government restrictions.
Yeah, which has been pretty interesting. When I was there, it was like a stop kind of start again, like to what WA, Western Australia was doing it, Northern Territory, down in Victoria, down to South Wales.
Western Australia is like, they're saying that they're going to be open in, maybe February 2022 to just domestically within Australia. So that's the thing. These governments, the state governments, are operating just on their own. The Commonwealth or the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, he's trying to get the whole of Australia open. But really to do that, it also relies on these state governments who are of different parties, and there's a big election coming up, which is a whole nother topic. Yeah. So politically, there's a few things that are just, things are happening slowly. So the good thing is, as long as you can be a little bit patient, I know it's been so long. For some people, it's been 2 years or more since they've seen their family. Things are progressing. There is hope at the end of the tunnel and light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to hang in there. And for us, we're the same. It's just like, man, we just want to get back to Queensland, but it's just taking us, it seems like forever. But yeah, it won't be too long.
Hey everyone, hopefully you were getting great value in today's video. Hopefully go subscribe to Respira channel and go do some yoga with Louis and Amalia. If you are getting some value in this video here today, please tap the like button. It helps this video rank in the YouTube algorithm so other people out there like yourselves who might be wondering when they can visit Australia and if these current relaxations of the border restrictions will affect them or not, they'll see this video. If you guys please tap the like button. And now back to the video. What were you thinking, Louis, as far as like strategy? You kind of alluded to it as far as who's allowed to come in with its family or tourists. Is it that a breakdown there, like as far as family can come in a certain state or tourists can come in another state, or working on a visa people, which what I was on that visa? How's the big guidance there based off the state, which is kind of what you alluded to?
Yeah, I don't know exactly in terms of, for example, Queensland, until they hit 80%, I'm pretty certain that government are not going to allow anyone to come in. The main reason that governments are not wanting a lot of visitors in is because in Australia, COVID spikes have happened through international travel. Many of the COVID cases have happened in hotel quarantine. And where did they get that? From abroad. So what most of these governments, state governments or the federal government way back, was so strict about is trying to limit the ICU, the amount of people in the intensive care unit in hospitals, because hospitals in Australia are not, as they're not all around the world, they weren't really prepared for COVID. In New South Wales, I think the hospital system has coped quite well, even during what was the worst part of COVID for us, which was only a few months ago. It has done quite well, from my understanding. And geez, when you go in and you get your vaccination, those places, you see how hard these healthcare workers work day and night to make sure that we're all safe and healthy. So thank you to all of those people. Yes. So, I mean, that was the main reason, is because they didn't want the hospital systems to be overwhelmed. And that's still the main reason for a lot of these state governments not to open the borders domestically or internationally.
I think we talked about that tourists will probably be at the bottom of the pecking order after probably families, working holiday visa, and so on, and student visas. If you had to throw out a guess there, I'll throw you a side question. When do you think tourists might be able to kind of roam freely throughout the country?
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's going to be the end half of next year.
Okay.
Australia needs to open up. There are so many businesses, particularly, as I said, in Queensland, the Great Barrier Reef, all of those businesses along the coast are struggling so much because they get a lot of tourism.
I know when I was there and when I first arrived in the end of 2019, it was the fires, which is what all the tourist businesses were getting ravished by.
I remember I bought masks for the fires, which were before COVID, and we still had some masks left over. So it was, and that's when masks were all selling out. But yeah, seriously, the tourism industry, because that fire went through the whole of the east coast of Australia, pretty much from, I think, the lower part of Queensland all the way down to Victoria. Don't know if it got into Tasmania, but and South Australia as well. It's seriously, like, the whole country was just ablaze. It was horrible. So that obviously stopped a lot of people traveling to Australia in what was summer, so a great time to come to our beaches and explore. And then COVID came not long after. It was only a couple of months after. And I remember sitting in my car, like, listening to the radio, hearing about coronavirus for the first time, and just kept on coming in faster. And the main thing in Australia was a cruise ship hang around for too long.
Yep.
But anyway.
Yeah, I remember that one. I took a random photo of that when I went out on the ferry taking photos in Sydney Harbor, and it happened to be that one. I'm forgetting the name of it, but they let it in, the Border Patrol, and that was the source of a lot of infections.
Princess Cruise, I think it was, or something like that.
So. It used to be burned in my brain. That's all they would talk about. But, sign up for everybody watching. Louis and I actually first became friends through Lululemon, not sponsored here, but I'm wearing it. We might be as well.
Yes.
We were in a cafe at Bondi Beach, and we were like, "Oh, you hear about the thing, coronavirus? Like, it's going pretty wild in China." And I don't think it had hit Italy that bad yet. We were talking about it. But I'm sure everybody can relate and have their own stories. They remember where they were when they first heard of it. And then here we are now.
Totally.
And from most Americans that I've heard about it to think that most Australians may not agree with their government, or how could their government being so repressive. And what I felt when I was over there is, yes, I was over there when COVID was way better. And percentage-wise, the population, it still is way better than the US and Europe, for just two examples. But some Americans can be like, how can they be taking away humans' rights so much? And these snot border lockdowns, that's not fair. I guess, what would you say to other people out there? Do they have the right understanding of that? Or maybe it's different?
I don't know. It's kind of a hard question to answer because...
Yes, 100%.
Without all of the views, I don't want to be too general, but I know I can't be too specific because we just don't have the time for that. In terms of, how it's been in Australia, I think the biggest burden for people has been their mental health because they've been locked inside for so long. And it's just like, the 21 days it takes to build a new habit, right? So in 21 days, you can also lose all of the good habits that you might have had before, or lost all of those, good things that you really cherished, whether that is seeing your customers or guests on a day-to-day basis. Just that human interaction was lost over the past 2 years. So I think as a society, it's going to be an interesting shift into what the future will be post-pandemic. Will people travel more? How will people communicate? Is it going to be more online? Is it going to be in person?
Yeah, time will tell. Our yoga class is going to be online or in person, Louis, for a Spirit Channel.
We'll always have online. I think that's something that we've committed to, but we do want to have more in person as soon as we can, because it is that authentic space and sacred space that you create, whether it's in a yoga studio or a retreat.
For me, it was personally weird living COVID in a foreign country, watching with a microscope how everything moved and all, like I learned who all the premiers were and so on and so forth. And also watching the US. I felt like I was living a dual life during this whole thing. And then eventually I made the jump in May of this year. In 2021, I came back to the States. That was an adjustment. So the reason why I kind of conclude with that here is that wherever you're watching this in the world, neither Louis nor I are experts. This might mostly apply to people who want to either go to Australia, have family in Australia, maybe have been in Australia before and have a certain tie to it, and or vice versa, go between Australia and the United States. And it's a fun conversation. And I don't mean fun to take it too lightly. COVID is a whole nother conversation. This is going to be a life-changing event for all of us out there, but a fun conversation by the means of you need to have the conversation with family, friends, coworkers. I think it helps take the weight off of most of us, and it helps share information. And these days especially, we need to share more information to pull out the stereotypes and to inform people. And then at the end of the day, you can go live a good life, hopefully. But not to get too talking in circles there. But probably enough for you guys' time today. I want to wrap up with thanking Louis so much.
So thanks everyone for joining. I hope that you've got some value out of what we've shared with you. Whether you live in Australia or abroad, I think it's really important for you to keep up with all of the current statistics and data and stay hopeful. Brian's going to link everything in the description box below, so go and check that out to stay up to date. And thank you, Brian, for having me to share all of these thoughts.
Thank you, Lou. It's my pleasure. Always, we love catching up on Signal, whatever is the apps in real time. But we want to bring this to you guys today, both the viewers, Underwear and Explore, and maybe some way through a spirit channel in the future as well. There's something I can add to the yoga community. But so really appreciate your time. And also, this is not the end of it. We're going to make this into a series where Louis and I are going to go back and forth and try to share the value that we can from my experience living in Australia and now back in the States, and Louis' experience being a real live Australian, if you don't know any, and still being in Oz. So COVID's not over, unfortunately, yet. The lockdown situation in all the countries or borders, it's not a done deal. So we're going to keep on keeping on and bring more of these videos to you in the future. So hopefully we'll see you there. Hey everybody, thank you so much for making it this far in the video. If you haven't already, please tap the like button and go subscribe to the Respira channel as well. Get loose, do some good yoga with Louis and Amalia. And a side note, you might be able to pick up some more Spanish over on Respira Español with Amalia. And if you're not quite there yet, feel free to tune into Respira Inglés with Louis. And again, thank you for your time. We'll see you in the next video, and do not forget to explore more.